Olá, pessoal. Boa tarde, boa noite. Como estamos? Hoje é quarta-feira, dia 23. A gente tem hoje uma live super bacana com um professor queridíssimo nosso, uma live internacional, com o professor Bradley Shelver, diretamente de Nova York. Em breve ele vai estar conectando conosco. É uma live com uma pessoa que eu gosto muito, que é um colaborador meu já de 8 anos, né? Como eu já falei anteriormente, eu conheci o Bradley em 2011, quando eu fiz o meu primeiro congresso. Naquela época era Congresso Brasileiro de Dança Moderna, antes dele se tornar pan-americano. E, na verdade, o Bradley foi enviado por uma mentora minha da técnica de Horton, que é a Ana Marie Forsyth, que é a chefe de cadeira da técnica de Horton no Alvin Ailey, que é, né, a maior e melhor escola de dança moderna do mundo. E aí ela não pôde vir nessa época, mas ela falou, vou enviar o meu pupilo, né, a pessoa que foi trabalhada por mim. E eu não conheci o Bradley, mas se ele foi indicado pela Ana Maria, eu falei, bom, né, ele deve ser muito bom. E aí a gente se conheceu em 2011 e foi incrível, porque ele é um professor espetacular. Ó, pessoal chegando aí, boa noite, galera. Boa noite, Paulo. Boa noite, pessoal. E ele é uma das melhores, assim, foi uma das melhores indicações da minha vida, porque ele se tornou um grande amigo e um grande colaborador. Tá chegando aqui na sala e vamos lá ver com muito carinho o nosso querido Bradley. Vamos ver se ele conecta. Hello! How are you,
Hi.
my dear?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I missed you. How are you?
Likewise. I'm not. I'm good. I'm good. Enjoying the last few days of summer in New York.
Yeah, how is New York?
It's good. It's quiet. The arts is adjusting with everything, like everywhere else in the world. But New York is good. I'm back to teaching like crazy, and there's a lot of students that are excited to be back in the studios. So we're very lucky.
So you're teaching now like presential classes. You started with
Yes.
presential classes.
Yeah, Joffrey starts next week, but Ailey started 2 weeks ago. I'm at Montclair State University now as well. And then Iglevsky Ballet and ABT, we're all in person now, so with masks and all the precautions, but it's good.
How does it look like for you to go back to studio with masks, and how many people?
It's strange, especially somewhere like Ailey that is, it's such a big building and then it always had so much energy and companies were rehearsing and studio rentals and performances, and now none of that is happening. It's just classes. I have maybe 8 students in a class where I used to have 25 to 30 wearing masks. We have these big, 6-foot boxes that everyone has to sort of dance in, and everything is done remote. We sign in with a barcode, and there's no, it's very little interaction, and it's sad, but it's also, I think everyone, like I said, is so excited and grateful to be back in the studio and to just move. So it's.
Do you guys get to move bigger? How does it feel?
Well, we have a lot of rules in place. Also, because we all worked with the physical therapists and the orthopedic surgeons to prevent injuries, because a lot of dancers haven't been able to jump or really do anything big for the last 4 or 5 months. So for the first 6 weeks, no jumping, no excessive cardiovascular stuff till we, learn the rules of, the particles in the air, and, so moving across the floor is not really, we don't really do that. So we as teachers have also had to work on being very creative in how we are now structuring our classes and how to basically retrain dancers' bodies. So.
Okay, so let me just translate a little bit, because I know that a little bit of our audience do not speak English, so just a little bit. Então, pessoal, eu só vou fazer um pouquinho de tradução, não vou fazer tecla SAP para vocês, porque senão a conversa não flui. Mas eu vou falar um pouquinho do que ele falou. Eu perguntei como é que tá a volta dele para os estúdios por conta da Covid. E ele tem falado que começou agora, tem algumas escolas que vão começar semana que vem, mas que ele já começou. E que antigamente no Eile ele tinha uma turma de 25 pessoas, né? E que agora, no máximo, 8, e eles estão nos quadrados, com máscara. Eu acho que muitas pessoas aqui já estão experimentando essa realidade de estar com todas essas restrições, mas que também eles têm a orientação para que não façam muitos saltos, porque as pessoas estão começando agora, as pessoas ficaram meses em casa sem poder saltar, com várias restrições de movimentação. Então, os próprios professores precisam ser criativos para estruturar uma aula que não exija ainda tanto, para que possa ir reabilitando esses alunos nas atividades e principalmente no cardiovascular. Não dá para forçar muito a barra do cardiovascular. Coming back for you, just like a little flash translating mode. But we are very excited. In here, we have a lot of people that are working in their places, but still a lot of restrictions. So we do have a lot of people working from home and adjusting their homes as little studios. So it's beautiful to see that there are people that actually they build their own bars with pipes. And also they're putting some marley on the floor, they're adjusting. And what I've realized is that we can actually learn something like from home. It's possible. And I remember that when you came in January, we were talking exactly about that. Like I was predicting that something like that would happen. That we were like, we're like breaking our heads trying to put together a way for these people here in South America to have availability for a program, for a building an important program. And voila, we have online classes through Zoom. And I'm very excited, to be honest with you. I'm very excited. I don't know about you, but I am. So let's share. I want to hear your impressions and what do you think about that?
Well, I definitely think that we are very lucky to be able to access and stay connected artistically via these online platforms. Just this summer alone, I had so much travel planned. I was supposed to teach in Moscow and Paris and Israel and San Francisco, and I was supposed to come to the Pan American Dance Congress, and still being able to access. I ended up teaching a week-long program for dancers in Russia very early in the morning. But also with translators and reaching almost, sometimes there were about 62 students every day. Wow. In this class. And it was quite uplifting, actually, because being in quarantine and feeling so isolated, and then yet still being able to practice my craft and educate and connect with all these dancers that maybe ordinarily I wouldn't have. Even if I'd have gone to Russia this summer, there are many of those students that may not have had the financial abilities or the time, to experience this kind of training. So, I am definitely a strong advocate for in-person training, because there's nothing like being in a dance studio with a live teacher, live music, interaction, the energy. There's nothing like that. But there's also a lot to be said for having the option and the possibility to share with more people, and don't even have to change out of your pajamas.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Let me just translate that.
Yeah.
Pessoal, eu perguntei para ele o que ele acha, né, dessa questão da gente poder estudar online, até porque quem me conhece sabe que eu trabalho com Bradley há quase uma década. E a gente vem ao longo dessa década discutindo maneiras de otimizar e de fazer com que a dança moderna chegue, né, com mais constância. As pessoas aqui, vocês já sabem que eu me virei em mil pedaços aí para trazê-lo várias vezes. Ele já veio 8 vezes ao Brasil. Eu estou sempre procurando, né, fazer com que a gente dê continuidade ao trabalho, mas assim é difícil por conta de custos e nem sempre eu posso trazê-lo. E essa coisa do online, de você, por exemplo, ele tinha várias viagens marcadas esse verão para a Europa, para a Rússia, e ele conseguiu dar aulas até para mais alunos do que o previsto por conta de ter sido online. Porque às vezes, mesmo no próprio país para onde você viaja, as pessoas não têm dinheiro para estarem naquela cidade, para estarem naquele curso, e elas acabam conseguindo assistir pelo online. É óbvio que, como ele falou, ele não troca a experiência presencial por nada. E realmente nada se compara à experiência presencial, que é você ter um professor na sua frente, você ter, de repente, um músico e tal. Mas a gente não pode também jogar para o alto e descartar essa coisa que o online nos trouxe, essa possibilidade da gente poder ter esse tipo de contato de uma forma mais permanente. What I was telling them also is that for a place like here, you came in January. So having you as a permanent teacher will give them the possibility of having you every week, coaching them. I know nothing compares to the live experience, but at least they can have like permanent input from you and also some feedback, because somehow you can see them live and you can see if they're doing a mistake and they can evolve. And I think that's so rich. This possibility is so rich. It's amazing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Consistency, it's
Absolutely.
creating a sense of
Absolutely.
consistency.
Absolutely.
And, being able to, especially if, students returning that I saw in January, or, again, when we start to pick up with the Pan American Dance Congress in June, and even, it's great to have those moments all together. And then after that, it's just, okay, so remember we worked on this live, now we can continue with this. And remember that note correction I gave you, this is what the next step would be. So it's great. It's definitely opened up a new world for that possibility.
I think this is amazing. I think that's the answer that we were looking for the last 10 years almost, since we started to work together back in 2011.
Right.
I think that was like, breaking my head trying to find that answer. I remember last year when you came to the Pan American Congress, we were talking like, Bradley, help me to think, how can I make this happen? And this year we have an answer, and this is fantastic. Right. I think there is a person here that wanted to place a question. So Luciana, go ahead. Faz a sua pergunta aí. Você perguntou, então faça a sua pergunta. Because they're chatting sometimes. But there are a lot of people coming in. There are a lot of people interested. A lot of your students as well. That I can see here. Isadora, Elisa, Paulo, people that were here in January. Então, pessoas que estavam aqui. Olá, hello for everyone. Se a Luciana quiser fazer a pergunta dela, faça, escreva. Let's continue before anybody has any question. I would like you to, briefly tell me, like, how everything started for you. How did you end up at Ailey? I know you were born in South Africa. Some people don't know the story, and I think your story is fantastic. So I think you should just give us a brief.
Well, I started dancing very young, and from the age of 4. Very, very supportive family, especially my father, interestingly enough. Very supportive, yes. Sent me to a performing arts school when I was 4 years old. I can't even imagine what I was doing at 4 years old, but I was doing dancing. And then I got into performing arts high school. I did a lot of television, and film work actually as a kid, as a TV presenter, and in a soap opera, all of that stuff. So I started that way first, also, in conjunction with dance. And then I went to Performing Arts High School, the National School of the Arts in Johannesburg. And in South Africa, I'm not sure if anyone knows the history of it, but we had a set of laws called apartheid, which separated people of color from whites. And because of that, we had very strict rules as far as, or the international community imposed strict rules on travel to South Africa and artistic exchange and trade, all of that stuff. So we didn't really have any access to outside companies or the arts. Certainly nobody toured to South Africa because it was considered then sort of illegal in the international world. But towards the apartheid ended officially in 1994. We got a new president in 1996, and round about that time in 1996, the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theatre traveled to South Africa for the first time, because all the trade embargoes and artistic embargoes were now lifted. So the company came to South Africa and they held auditions. They were looking for 2 scholarship students, full scholarships, accommodation, travel, schooling, a stipend to be able to go to the theater and eat, everything for a year was covered.
Wow.
So of course they held an audition, and I went. I was young. I was still in high school. And there were a lot of professional dancers there, a lot of older dancers there, and there was only 2 scholarships, and they selected 2 dancers who were already professionals. They were already dancing for professional companies. And then all of a sudden, towards the end of the audition, my name was called to step forward, and Miss Judith Jamison, who had been sitting in the back of the theater at the time with one of the board members, came forward and announced that a 3rd scholarship would be made available because they noticed the talent of someone. And that someone was me. So I was very shocked.
How old were you?
I was 15 at the time.
And you moved at 15 to New York?
No, I had 2 more years left of high school. So I had about a year and a half left of high school. The scholarship would start in 1998.
Okay.
But that same year, I had also received an invitation to join NDT2, Netherlands Dance Theatre 2.
Wow.
The company had come also to South Africa for the first time, and company class was oddly enough taught by the then artistic director, Yuri Killian, who never taught class.
Yuri.
And he hated teaching company class, but he was teaching a company class for the company, and he invited some students from the school, the upper level students from the National School of the Arts, to come and take company class. So we did. And after the company class, he approached me and said, I would be very interested in having you join NDT2. And I explained to him, well, I'm still in high school. He was like, that's completely fine. I'm not asking you to leave high school. Come after high school. So I was like, great. Now, I didn't know that much about NDT at the time because, again, we didn't have exposure to all of that. Obviously, did a lot of research, fell in love with the company, and then, a few months later, get the Ailey Scholarship. So, I'm very much a person who believes in I committed to something, this is what I'm going to do. So I contacted, NDT2, the director of NDT2, and I said, I've had this opportunity for a scholarship with Ailey, and obviously New York. I wanted to go to New York, and I said to them, is there any way that we can defer? Can you wait? They were like, absolutely. Training is important. You can definitely benefit from a year training in New York City. Of course, we know the Ailey company, we know the school. Go. So I moved to New York in 1998. Didn't know anyone. I had just turned 17, So I moved to New York and went to the school. And about 5 months into my training at the school, they asked me to join 82.
Oh,
So now I was like, wonderful. But what am I going to do now? So I ended up having to make a choice, and I chose a life in New York. I trained, toured extensively with the company. And then during this time, obviously, my exposure to Horton was through Anna Marie Forsyth and Milton Myers, who both took me under their wing and sort of mentored me as sort of to be able to teach and to be able to pass the torch of the Horton technique on. And I took that very seriously, and I trained with them consistently. Even after I was still with the company, I would
uh-huh.
still, whenever in New York, train and get all the information, the notes, and no. And then after, do you need some time to translate, or are we good?
No, I need to translate, but it's so
Go.
fascinating. I'm just like in love with the story, like always. Eu preciso traduzir, mas é porque a história dele é muito fascinante, gente. Ele começou a dançar com 4 anos na África do Sul. A família dele dava muito apoio para ele, principalmente o pai, né? O que ele falou que é estranhamente interessante. O pai dele dava muita força para ele. Ele começou aos 4 anos, mas ele entrou logo para uma escola de performance, uma escola artística, e ele fazia de tudo. Ele trabalhava na TV, ele fez comerciais, fez uma novelinha infantil. Então ele já tinha essa veia artística muito estimulada pela família desde cedo. Só que na África do Sul eles tinham um regime chamado apartheid, em que as pessoas negras e as pessoas brancas eram separadas na África do Sul. Então isso durou por muitos anos e haviam muitos embargos em relação a viagens, em relação a coisas dos estrangeiros chegarem na África do Sul. E isso, o regime acabou em 1994, apenas em 1996 é que eles tiveram um novo presidente, e aí que houve uma abertura desse embargo político, né? E eles começaram a receber companhias de dança de outros países. Então, nessa época, 1996, o Alvin Ailey, a companhia American Dance Theatre, Alvin Ailey American Dance Theatre, visitou pela primeira vez a África do Sul. E aí eles ofereceram 2 bolsas, né, para numa audição, fizeram uma audição pública, fizeram apresentações, mas fizeram workshops para a comunidade e audição pública. E aí ele foi fazer, ele estava numa escola que era uma escola de artes, né, era uma escola em que ele fazia o segundo grau, equivalente ao segundo grau, mas ele também tinha todas as artes, né? Então é uma escola que aqui a gente não tem isso, né? Mas lá e nos Estados Unidos também tem, que a ênfase é a arte e ele fazia dança. Então as bolsas foram concedidas para 2 bailarinos profissionais. Entretanto, a diretora da escola, né, primeira bailarina da companhia, que era Judith Jamison, saiu, se levantou e disse que uma terceira bolsa seria concedida e seria para ele, porque ele era muito talentoso e que eles queriam dar essa bolsa. Nesse momento, ele informou que ele ainda estava no colégio, que ele não tinha terminado, e eles disseram que esperariam por ele. Né? Esperariam ele terminar o colégio para ir para Nova York. No ano seguinte, uma companhia maravilhosa que eu amo também, que é o Netherlands Dance Theatre, no ano seguinte foi para a África do Sul, e aí eles foram fazer a aula da companhia e ele ganhou um outro convite, que foi para ir para a NDT2, que é a companhia jovem. Né? E o próprio Jerry Killian, que é um gênio do balé contemporâneo, o próprio Jerry Killian convidou-o para fazer parte da segunda companhia, só que ele já tinha assumido um compromisso com o Ailey. E ele também estava terminando o colégio. Então, quando o colégio terminou, ele disse que ele ia para Nova York primeiro, que ele ficaria um ano em Nova York e depois ele entraria em contato para, de repente, ir para a Europa. Acontece que quando ele chegou em Nova York, no terceiro mês da escola, ele já foi convidado para a Ailey 2, que é a segunda companhia do Ailey, e por lá ele ficou, fez a opção dele, né, de ficar em Nova York. e também de treinar a fundo a técnica de Lester Horton. É, enfim, ele como eu falei, ele foi mentorado pela Anna Marie Forsyth, né, que é assim uma das referências da técnica no mundo, e pelo Milton Myers, que também é uma das referências da técnica no mundo. E foi a Anna Marie que me indicou o Bradley para o congresso em 2011. You can move on.
So, after while I was dancing with 82, probably in my second season, I was invited by Elisa Monte, who has a company, had a company back then called Elisa Monte. It was called Monte Brown Dance.
Mm-hmm.
Elisa Monte Dance now. She asked me to join the company. So I ended up taking that position. I had to turn down the spot at NDT2, and chose to pursue, staying in New York. So I danced with Elisa Monte for 3 years. At the same time, still don't know how I did this, I also danced with Complexions Contemporary Ballet. I feel like I was always on tour between the two companies. After Elisa and Complexions, I joined Ballet Hispanico in New York for a year. After Ballet Hispanico, I was invited to audition for the Limon Dance Company. They were looking for one man, and of course 132 showed up.
Wow.
It was a week-long audition. I had never taken Limon before, except a little bit here and there at Ailey. And I ended up getting that job too, which was wonderful. I think a lot of that spoke to the fact that I've always trained myself to be versatile, and especially even in the Horton technique that is so clear in its shape, I was still able I was still trained to be versatile. So I adapted very well to Limon Company. I loved the style. I loved the movement. I loved the works. It's so steeped in history and humanity. After I was actually at the same time as I was with Limon, I had an agent in Italy, and I was doing a lot of international galas and performances as a teacher and also as a performer. And in one of the performances in Siena in Italy, a artistic director was there from a company in the UK called Phoenix Dance Theatre, also a company with a very rich history of African sort of inspired dance. He invited me. He was the newly appointed artistic director, and he decided to, instead of holding an audition, travel around the world and hand-pick dancers for his company. So he came to see me at one of these gala performances and asked me if I'd be interested in coming to Leeds in the UK, joining Phoenix Dance Theatre. He said I could have whatever repertory I wanted to dance, and he wanted to hire me also as a company teacher for both Limon and Horton, because the company would have Limon, Horton, Cunningham, and ballet every week as their company classes.
Cool.
Because we had a very, very diverse repertory at the time.
And you had to move to UK?
I had to move to the UK to do that. And also part of my contract was because he really enjoyed my choreography. In the second year of my contract, because he wanted me in the first year to focus on just performing and teaching, training the company. The second year, I would create a work for the company as well. So I decided to leave the Limon Company, move to the UK, and the two pieces of repertory that I chose to bring with me was the Moorish Pavan and Chakan, interestingly enough.
I know that, sir.
So I couldn't, he said, you can have anything. If it's in our budget, you can have anything. And I was like, well, I had just started learning Chakan, and I just started learning the Moorish Pavan. I was like, let's do that. So we did.
What was your role in Moorish Pavan?
I was Iago.
Of course.
Actually, I did both. I did both Iago and I did the Moor. I preferred doing Iago.
Yeah.
We had another dancer in the company that he selected from the Cunningham company, in New York who came over, and the two of us, the two, I guess, Americans, were tasked with that. And then also Shikon, which for me is just, you know, I had started learning Shikon with, at the same time as Mikhail Baryshnikov.
I know, this is
in the studio with Sarah Stackhouse, and it was just, you know, that was definitely an experience of a lifetime that I'll never forget. So I had already started learning it, and then, you know, continued that in the UK, and just it's such a beast of a solo. You know, it's 11 minutes of just you on stage, and you know, it's those life-changing experiences that you remember forever. You know, career-changing, life-changing.
Amazing. Let me translate that.
Yes.
Let me translate all of that, because it's such, it's amazing. And it's an amazing story. You have such an amazing story. Ele estava me falando um pouco da trajetória dele. A gente falou, né, dele ter ido para os Estados Unidos, ter optado pelo treinamento lá, e aí como floresceu a carreira profissional dele como bailarino. Já no segundo ano da ALA2, ele recebeu um convite da Elisa Monte, que é uma belíssima coreógrafa de lá. Então ele entrou já no segundo ano antigamente se chamava Monty Brown Dance Company, hoje em dia se chama Elisa Monte Dance Company. Dali da Elisa Monte, ele também dançou com Complexions, que é balé contemporâneo. Também dançou com balé hispânico, let me know, balé hispânico, Elisa Monte, Complexions.
Ballet Hispanico, Phoenix Dance Theater.
No, that was in the UK, but before Le Mans. Então,
before Le Mans was Ballet Hispanico.
Balé hispânico, e aí ele fez uma audição com 132 homens para o Limon, para a companhia do Limon. E aí ele passou e dançou 3 anos com a Limon. You danced 3 years with Limon, right?
3 years with Limon, yes.
That's where you met Pablo.
That is where I met Pablo, yes.
Então, a gente tem o nosso professor Pablo, quem já é, né, o nosso aluno do Pablo, eles dois dançaram juntos no Limon. O Pablo e o Bradley, mais novinhos. E com a Ryoko, que é uma outra professora que a gente tem do congresso, ainda não está na escola, ela virá mais adiante, mas eles foram colegas de companhia da Limon. Nessa mesma época, ele é um cara muito ativo, é um cara que também é muito versátil, ele dança qualquer repertório. Isso é uma coisa que é uma característica do Bradley, que ele se adapta a muitos repertórios de muitas companhias. Então, ele tinha um agente na Itália que marcava galas para ele, também workshops para ele dar como professor. E numa dessas galas, um diretor artístico da Inglaterra viu ele dançando, que é a Phoenix Dance Company na Inglaterra, no Reino Unido, e ele foi convidado a se juntar, né, a essa companhia como professor da companhia, das técnicas de Horton e Limon, e bailarino. E no ano seguinte do contrato, ele se mudou para o Reino Unido, e no ano seguinte do contrato foi quando ele começou a carreira dele como coreógrafo. Nessa época que ele foi para o Reino Unido, a companhia tinha muito dinheiro, e aí eles perguntaram o que o Bradley queria dançar, porque ele ia pagar para ele dançar qualquer repertório que ele quisesse. E na Limon Dance Company, ele estava aprendendo 2 repertórios maravilhosos assim, e lendários da companhia, que um deles é Morse Pavane, que é a pavana do Mouro, que aliás o Pablo faz lindamente, e depois um solo chamado Chacon. O Bradley, é legal a gente frisar que o Bradley aprendeu esse solo Chacon ao mesmo tempo que o Mikhail Baryshnikov. Então, eles aprenderam juntos o solo, tá? Para dançarem em lugares diferentes em gala, mas ele falou que isso é um dos momentos que mais marcaram a vida dele, que ele estava no estúdio aprendendo essa coreografia do Limon junto com o Baryshnikov. Então, isso é incrível. Bradley, I have a question here for you.
Yes.
From one of the viewers. She's asking, what have each of you learned about yourselves as teachers as well as artists during this pandemic? I would like you to answer that. What have you learned about yourself as a teacher as well as an artist during the pandemic?
I think as an artist, I've learned that we are incredibly resilient. We will always find a way. I think that's the beauty of the arts is doesn't matter what is happening in the world and what, you know, world wars and pandemics and politics, you know, the artist will always find a way to create and will always find a way to present humanity at its most best and at its most worst. It's a reflection, you know, that saying art imitates life. You know, I think with all of that said, if it wasn't for dance, if it wasn't for us being able to connect virtually this way, and be able to continue to share our art, I think the world would have completely stopped. The world stopped, but I feel like because artists are still out there and we're still creating, we found resilient and creative ways to still do what we do, the world kept moving. And that, I feel like, is the sole purpose of the arts. You know, as a teacher, you know, we have formulas and we know that we have things, we start to develop things that we know work with this student, work with this body, work with this. And in this pandemic, I've really had to rethink, reshape, reorganize, find other ways to be creative in order to be able to engage and transfer the knowledge of dance onto the student. So I think if anything out of this situation, I have definitely become, I feel like, a stronger teacher, a more articulate teacher. You know, I thought I was articulate before, but you know, we rely so much on showing and demonstrating and do it like I do, and when you're in a situation where you don't necessarily have the space to do that, I've had to find creative ways of letting the dancer move and experience the sensation and the feeling in much different way, in many different ways. And I definitely think that I'm a stronger teacher now, you know. I'm
Yeah,
a
I think
confident teacher now. I was always a confident teacher, but I'm way more confident now in my
yeah,
craft.
because you can do anything, right? We can
Yeah,
we
we've
can do
had to, yeah.
anything. We can do anything. That's so amazing. Let me just translate that. A gente perguntou o que que a pandemia, né? Foi perguntado o que que a pandemia fez em termos de modificações, né? Como bailarino e como artista, né? Nesse momento, né? De confinamento. E para ele apenas reforçou o ponto de vista de que os bailarinos têm muita resiliência e eles podem ultrapassar qualquer tipo de barreira, né? Muita perseverança, muita resiliência e o talento, eu acho, a capacidade de se reinventar. Eu acho que ele se achava um bom professor anteriormente, mas com a pandemia ele tem certeza de que ele é um muito melhor professor, porque ele teve que encontrar formas criativas de, né, contornar essa distância física, de não poder tocar o aluno, de poder ser mais descritivo, de poder formular uma aula em que ele possa ser bem sucedido com todos os problemas que a gente tem de conexão, de delay, de música, de tudo isso, e a gente consegue, né, tá conseguindo adequar e fazer a coisa acontecer. Realmente eu acho que a pandemia atrapalhou as pessoas, mas assim, deixou a gente em casa, mas eu acho que o fato da gente poder estar conectado pela internet, poder trabalhar pela internet, fez com que as coisas continuassem em movimento, mesmo com todos esses obstáculos. Então, o mundo não parou. Eu acho que se a gente não tivesse internet, o mundo realmente teria parado, foi o que ele disse. O mundo não parou. Ele está enfrentando obstáculos, mas a gente continua de outra maneira, mas a gente está ativo. Eu acho que isso é a melhor coisa. We are going to invite people you're going to give an open class, right, to the Brazilian students next Thursday. And we're going to start in October your class every Thursday. I'm very excited. So what were the basic program for level 1 that you are envisioning?
Well, I think the assumption is that most dancers who approach the technique don't know the technique, right? So I'm going to start with the fundamentals of and the foundations of the technique. I call them the Horton 7. So it's the 7 basic shapes that exist in the technique. Not only refining those shapes and making sure that the dancer understands them, but also making sure the dancer knows how to transition in and out of those shapes. Because in the Horton technique, it can be a very extreme technique if not taught correctly. It deals a lot with hyperextension. It deals a lot with the body being able to adjust to those extreme positions. So part of my goal in the first level of the Horton classes is to make sure that the dancer understands their body through the technique, understands how to use their bodies, how to work with their bodies, how to make the technique work for their bodies as well, which is very important. In order for the technique to be organic and to be assimilated into the muscle memory, the body has to accept the shapes, has to accept the transitions, has to accept the extreme qualities that exist. So that is my goal on the mental level. On the physical level, it is making sure that they understand the basics of level of fortification 1 through 4, which sets a very clear tone for the technique. There are also the fortifications that help the dancer understand the main focus of the technique, which is opposition and oppositional energy and balance and length in the muscles. You know, the technique was designed to train dancers in the shortest amount of time. There's exercises for every part of the body. So I want to give dancers that experience. More importantly, it's giving them the joyful experience of the Horton technique so that it doesn't feel so daunting, it doesn't feel so difficult. A lot of people who have taken Horton classes are like, wow, that is a very difficult technique. Yes, it is. But if you have the right tools and the right understanding of why, it makes it much more acceptable for the body and much more of a joyful technique. There's so much movement and so much capability in it. And that's what my goal for the level 1 classes.
Amazing. Então, pessoal, ele deu uma prévia do que vai ser o curso dele pela escola. A gente já está com as inscrições abertas pelo site. A gente vai ter uma aula gratuita na semana que vem, dia 1º. A gente está adequando aos horários dele em Nova York. Então, eu peço que vocês tenham um pouco de paciência, porque no meio do curso vai mudar. Porque agora a gente está com 1 hora de diferença em Nova York, mas em breve a gente vai ter 2 horas de diferença. E ele é um professor extremamente requisitado. Então, assim, agora a aula vai ser, agora no mês de outubro, ela vai ser de 1h30 às 3h. Mas a partir de novembro, ela vai ser de 2h30 às 4h, por conta do fuso que muda. Mas o que ele vai dar nesse curso? O que ele estava explicando? Ele vai dar no curso realmente o material de nível 1, que são as 7 posições que ele chama Horton 7, que são as 7 posições que caracterizam a técnica de Horton, como entrar e sair dessas posições. Ele vai trabalhar as fortificações de 1 a 4, porque para ele são as fortificações que definem a tônica da aula, alguns outros estudos para trabalhar várias partes do corpo e para que vocês entendam princípios básicos da técnica, como posição, alinhamento, alongamento, fortalecimento e de uma forma segura, com consciência, porque o trabalho, aliás, de todos os professores da nossa escola é pautado pela consciência corporal e de uma forma que a técnica fique orgânica para vocês, para que ela não seja tão... Ela é uma técnica difícil? Sim, é uma técnica difícil, mas se ela for bem ministrada, se ela for bem trabalhada, ela pode ser uma técnica orgânica e principalmente ela pode ser uma técnica divertida. Então ele quer dar para vocês essa sensação de que é uma coisa prazerosa de ser feita e não uma tortura, um sofrimento. Tá? A Jelen já colocou aqui no chat o link da escola, já tem um link disponível para vocês começarem a se inscrever. Na semana que vem a aula é gratuita e aberta para todos, e aí a gente já está com as inscrições abertas para estar iniciando o curso no dia 8 de outubro, que é a semana seguinte, tá? Bradley, I would love to thank you so much for your time and for your love and generosity towards us. We are very excited to welcome at the Pan American dance, modern dance school online courses. And this is only the beginning, because we are, even after the pandemics, this is our way to be connected to you in a permanent base. So thank you so much. So
Thank you.
much for your time. Love you so much. You know how much I love you.
Me too. I miss you. I can't believe we didn't see each other this June.
Well, but we saw each other in January. Like, it
Yes,
was
we did.
amazing. Like, before the whole world fell apart, you were here. So this was amazing. So I'm so happy
Definitely.
for that. I'm just going to remind the students that the class. Então, a aula experimental, gente, é quinta-feira que vem, dia 1º de outubro, October 1st, 1º de outubro. Vai ser de 1h30 às 15 horas. É porque para ele é 12h30 às 14, e vai continuar sendo para ele. Para a gente vai mudar, porque vai mudar o fuso dele em novembro. Então, agora no mês de outubro, ela será de 13h30 às 15. A partir de 1º de novembro, ela vai passar a ser de 14h30 às 16. Então, se programem, por favor, e não percam a oportunidade de trabalhar com esse homem maravilhoso, disputado a tapa no mercado internacional, e que está aqui cedendo o tempo e a energia dele para vocês. Thank you so much, my love. Have a
Thank you.
wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Love
And I'll
you,
see you
and
all next week.
see you next week. Bye bye.
Ciao. Bye.
Ciao.